Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls podcast, presented to you by PointsBet. Don't forget that promo code CHGO when you sign up to live your bet life. I'm Peck. You can follow me on Twitter at Bulls_Peck. My guy Big Dave is at BAL, BAWL Sports. Back in studio, back from Brazil. It's Will to Go Gottlieb. He's on Twitter at Won't Gottlieb. And joining us in studio, we are thrilled to have him here. You know him as the voice of the Bulls home games at the United Center, among many other things on his resume. Bears, Chicago Fire, Illini. But this is a Bulls podcast. We know you, Tim Sinclair, as the voice of the Bulls home games, the Bulls PA announcer at the UC. Give it up for Tim Sinclair in studio, everybody. Follow Tim on Twitter at Tim J. Sinclair. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. This is awesome. And Will's back in the country, and it's an honor to be back for the first show.
Just came back for you.
All for tomorrow, right?
Exactly.
Took the red eye.
I want to hear the starting lineup for when I return to the country.
Sure. Yeah, all right.
And now.
Just standing there at O'Hare when you arrive. And
pick me up from the international tournament.
We already have our crew in the comments. Shout out Percy say you got to have Tim introduce Matt, Dave, and Will in his intro voice. We are not important enough for that voice.
That would be awesome, though.
Would be awesome for names that matter.
One of these days, we'll get something worked out.
There you go. We'll take it, man.
Well, so I mean, let's just jump right in there. We are just on the cusp of a brand new Bulls season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your first season on the job for the Bulls was the no fans allowed COVID season. Yes. So what was it like this past season to now, for the first time doing the Bulls gig, see what a rocking madhouse on Madison is like when the Bulls are good and the place is hyped?
We were needing that so bad that first year. It was kind of nice in some ways for me, my first year, just getting a chance to get it out without all the fans there critiquing literally every last syllable. But, you know, after a game or two, you just want people in the building. And so last year was amazing, not only because we had fans, but because the team was significantly better than it was the year before. And so not only do you have great basketball to watch, but you also have people who care that there's great basketball being played.
True.
And, I never wanted to get used to no fans. I did probably 110 straight events to an empty arena or stadium.
Wow.
And so bringing people back finally was fantastic.
Now, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when COVID happened, you were one of the few announcers that were allowed to go to the bubble and be in there. What was it like being in the bubble, man? What was that whole thing like?
You know, I've often said it was like NBA summer camp. So everybody's in this controlled environment. You had a lake, and you could ride bikes, and you could fish or go golfing or swim. There was sort of a dining hall where everybody could go and get food, and then occasionally you get on buses for field trips. But in our case, field trips were NBA games. And so we would go and we would work a couple of games, and we'd come back and, you know, hit the pool till all hours of the night, try to get some sleep, and then do it again the next day. And all while walking down the boardwalk with Anthony Davis or like just those guys were everywhere, and it started to get normal. Not quite, but it started to get normal that you were there with all these guys, and they loved it because they didn't have all the cameras and media and people coming up to them asking for autographs and pictures. They could just be themselves too, and that was actually pretty cool.
A little more free.
Yes, a little bit.
All right.
Tim, I would love to know kind of about your career path. I mean, this is like announcing the starting lineup for the Chicago Bulls is like a very legendary thing to do. So, like, is this something you've always wanted to do from when you were a kid, and was it always like the Bulls that you wanted to announce? What is sort of your career trajectory been?
Yeah, none of that for me. Ironically, I was going to be an architect. I studied architecture at University of Illinois, and 3 semesters in, I sort of realized that I needed money to, you know, eat and things.
It's a thing.
And so I happened to know a guy who was a friend of my parents who worked at a radio station, and I just said, that would be a good part-time job, 4 or 5 hours a week. So I said, hey, can I help? And he said, sure, do you want to be on the air? And I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking just helping sweep or organize or whatever. And I said, okay. And so the overnight shift before my first college final, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., I did my first on-air shift. Wow. And I was awful. But I loved it. And sort of got bit by the radio bug. And for years worked in radio while loving sports, and the two never met. And finally, somebody at Illinois said, hey, we're looking for some new PA guys. You like sports? got a decent voice, why don't you try out? And I did, and nobody called me.
Wow.
It's like a year later when they finally got to me, and then one thing sort of came to the next, and eventually you end up doing something you never thought you'd do. And
That's really cool.
But by the time you had been then working, using your voice talent in the world of sports and not just radio broadcasting in general, enough people started telling you, or enough people started talking about what it means to be the person to introduce the Bulls starting lineup at home games. It's like, Dave and Will and I are all kind of the generation growing up watching MJ and the Bulls win titles in the 90s. Like, by the time I was 10, I knew that nobody was going to be using their big booming voice to say my name running onto a court or a field. I thought that the coolest job on the planet was what Ray Clay was doing for Bulls games.
Yes.
Like, has that sunk into you at this point, now that you've been on the job for a couple of years? Like, people get goosebumps going to that building.
I literally have goosebumps right now just
thinking about it. Gives you goosebumps, you know?
In bursts,
Yeah.
it does. Every once in a while, I think about it in that depth. I think the first time, and not with the Bulls, this happened with the Illini. I'd been working there 3 or 4 years, and my 3-point call with Illinois, I do 3 points, Illinois, and then who hit it. With the Bulls, it's just 3 points, and then who made it.
Right.
And I was walking out of a movie, and this 9-year-old kid behind me had some trash in his hand and was throwing it at the garbage can as he was leaving, and it went in, and he says, 3 points, Illinois. And I turn around, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people listen, this is amazing. And so I do know inherently that over the years that will happen here, that I will be the voice that people have grown up with as opposed to Ray or Tommy or whoever. And I just don't think about it too much, because there's a lot of pressure in that if you think about it. So I go out and try to be me, try to be authentic, try to pay homage to what that means, but also be myself if I can. And hopefully all that blends in a way that it sort of becomes the new normal. Even though it's a little different, it's still in many ways the same.
And that's what I noticed when I listen to you do the Bulls. Like, you can tell the history of the announcers previously before you, like you mentioned, Tommy Evans and Ray Clay. You can hear it in the way you're saying the certain inflections that you're putting on the, and now, or the from Chicago, like you combine it, but you're also making it your own, and that's the key part of this. But I wanted to, because it seems like you keep coming after legends, and stepping into those shoes. And people always say you never want to step into a great man's shoes or another man's shoes. So how do you make that work, stepping into those big shoes in different genres?
With fear and trembling, I think. I never want to shy away from a big opportunity, but also, whether it was the Bears or the Bulls, I was stepping in for a guy, or the Bulls, 2 guys who've done it for 40 years. Yeah. That's all anybody in Chicago remembers for the most part. And so I think I try not to pay attention to social media, although at least that I've seen, it's been overwhelmingly positive so far, and I'm eternally grateful for that, because it would really made it hard to start a career. It's, the backup from Michael Jordan when he left, and whoever's playing that
Pete
position.
Myers, that's a tough game.
Right. Not an easy thing to do. And so I've been really grateful for the welcome I've gotten and for how things have gone, and just want to keep that up. But I did think about it, and I got an email from Ray when I got the job, and I've talked with he and Tommy both since, and they've been fantastic. But yeah, there's some shaky knees at first.
I believe it. I believe it. And it's amazing because you're doing different sports as well. So, is there something you take from doing basketball to put on football or anything like that, or is it all just its own entity to you?
I think the only thing I take is me. I'm a fan with a microphone in some ways. A lot of it is information that I've got to get across, whether it's from the officials to teams or officials to the crowd, but also it's my job to help reflect what the crowd is or maybe should be feeling in a moment. And so whether it's soccer or football or basketball or anything else I get the chance to do, I try to put my own excitement into that as the situation allows.
Right.
I think some people are always at 11, right? They're always just turned up super loud or always excited.
Don't know anybody like that.
Why you looking over here, Will? What you doing, man?
Not just as people, Big Dave. In my profession specifically.
You don't have the luxury of throwing your hat while announcing the starting lineup.
Right. No, I haven't done that yet.
I don't know what you're talking about. My head is calmly sitting on my head right now, Will.
We're always
stay there.
calm
It's
and
good to be
quiet
back.
and collected.
But the idea is to be real. Like,
Yeah.
if you're down 30, the words are going to be the same, but the intensity is probably going to be a little different because no one's going to actually believe that I'm excited that we just hit a 3-pointer when we're down 30 in the fourth quarter.
Right.
Yeah.
So 3 points, Zach LaVine. I mean, that's fine. It is what it is. But it's not going to be the same as if it's a tie game.
Right.
Right.
And so you just got to be honest with yourself, honest with the audience, and hopefully they believe that you believe what you're doing, and I absolutely do. So.
That's
You
real.
mentioned like the intensity and energy of it. For me, I was only part of the media last year for the last maybe 5 or 10 games, but when that first home playoff game against the Bucks came around, like you could feel a different level of energy. What was that like to have not just like the first Bulls playoff game of the year, but in 5 years? I mean, they haven't made it in so long. So
Yeah, I don't think there is a way to describe it unless you've felt it. It's weird to have the exact same number of people in the exact same building as there were 2 nights ago, but it's totally different now.
Yeah.
And that's how a playoff sort of series is. I wish it would have lasted a little longer into the game because that game got out of hand in a hurry. But man, Chicago, when their teams are good and when there is something to cheer for, there is no city that's better. And I mean, I've worked a lot of games in a lot of places, and man, here it's unbelievable. Yeah. And I want many, many more of those, and I'd like to win some of them too, if possible.
We do too, Tim.
same over here.
We would too.
I agree with what Dave said a few moments ago about how you can tell when you're doing the Bulls starting lineup that you're clearly someone who recognizes the history of it, but also has put sort of your own stamp on it, your own twist on it. And I also think you do that with just some of the simple calls you make, whether it be Zach LaVine 3 points or this player making a dunk, what have you. Have you ever thought about how you have way fewer words to add your own individualistic flair to that announcing job as someone doing play-by-play or doing color commentary? And how do you put yourself and your stamp on it when it's not a long-winded play-by-play or commentary, but you're saying the name of the player and what happened, and that's it?
Yeah, I don't think about it in those terms necessarily. I know ultimately that's what happens. I remember going to games when I was a kid, whether it was Bulls games or Illini games, and I don't necessarily even remember all the players on the team or who won, but I remember the experience. At Illinois games, for example, I remember the band, and I remember the smell of the popcorn. I remember Jim Shepard's voice. I remember all those things that experientially made the game what it was, not so much the game itself. And so for this, I always try to think I'm a part of that experience, but I am not the experience. And if I try to become that, there's a major problem.
Fact.
And know that by repetition, being sort of the same when it's IO, for example.
I love your IO bucket call,
good.
by the
Thank
way.
you.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've had a lot of practice with that one because
Yeah.
we've been doing it for 3 years
Right,
at Illinois
exactly.
before he came to the Bulls.
Yeah.
it's perfect. Don't ever mess
Oh,
with
okay,
it.
good. I won't. But by repetition, regardless of what it is, it sort of becomes a stamp, even though that's not my intention necessarily. And I try to do something different for everybody, but I also don't practice them.
Yes.
I don't think about it in advance.
Really?
Exactly.
It just
That's
whatever
really surprising.
happens. And
I feel you, Tim.
It's that authenticity piece for me. Like, I
Yes.
don't want it to be rehearsed.
Yes.
But once it becomes a thing, like I listened back to when I recorded for 2K, for example.
Flex.
I didn't know DeMar was going to be on our team.
Yeah.
So when I go back and listen to my boys play as the Bulls and DeMar's on the team, and I hear my introduction, I hear it as DeMar DeRozan. But now that he's on the Bulls and I'm doing it every day, it's DeMar DeRozan.
Right.
It's just different. And so when I recorded for 23, it became that because it evolved over time. And so that's a very long-winded answer to a very short question. But
No, I love it.
That's kind of how it goes.
And it's so weird. I heard you say DeMar, the Bulls version just now.
Yeah.
And my brain went, holy crap. the person who makes that sound that you see on your TV every night is sitting on that chair over there.
Yeah, I just had the same moment. Yeah, I literally just flashed back to him in Jersey hitting a fadeaway and getting fouled, and I just heard you. Oh God, the Clippers game just fell back in my head with that. But I wanted to know how you even came to the point where you got this job here, because I know you were with the Pacers previously. So how did Chicago come about for you?
So I never planned to leave the Pacers. Like my dream, literally less than 4 years ago, I'd never worked a professional basketball, football, or baseball game.
That's amazing.
And I got the Pacers job, and I thought, that's it.
Right.
End all, be all. I'm in the NBA.
Right.
You're going to have to pry my cold, dead hands off of this job. But I was doing the fire. I've been doing the fire for almost a decade now. And the Bears job came open about a year into my time with the Pacers. And I went, my schedule has room for 10 games or so. I could do that in theory. Now, I didn't think I was going to get it, but I'm like, I'll apply for it. So I applied for that job, and then I heard from somebody within the Bulls organization asking me if I had any interest. And I won't lie, I said no.
Wow.
And it's not because I didn't think it was one of the greatest jobs in the world. It's not because that wasn't my hometown team. It's because I'd been with the Pacers for 13 months.
Loyalty.
And I just couldn't walk away from an organization that treated me really well and gave me my first shot. And I didn't ever plan to leave. And my parents and sister and their family, they're all in Indy. So I said no. And then I got to thinking about it, and I went, you were an idiot. That would be amazing. So what I said was, I will be interested if I get the Bears job, which in hindsight sounds pretty ballsy. And I didn't mean it to be that way. I didn't mean it to be like strong-arming anybody or a diva-ish. It was just the only way I could figure out explaining to my boss with the Pacers that I'm leaving that
to take
early.
2 jobs, not just one job that's different than this job.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is to go, I have a chance now to do 3 pro teams in the same city. Nobody on the planet is doing that.
Nobody.
And it's the Bulls and the Bears. I can't say no to that. And so that's kind of how I left it. Well, then I literally did my interview with the Bears March 9th of 2020.
Wow.
And
A week before the world shut down?
2 days before the world shut down. Because I drove that night and did a Pacers game against the Celtics. The next day was the start of the Big Ten tournament, which I was also doing in Indy. The first 2 games went off without a hitch Wednesday night. And then we announced Thursday morning it was done.
Right.
And so everything ground to a halt, including search processes for public address jobs.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was in the bubble that I got the Bears job. The Bulls called and said, okay, you still interested? And I said, yes. And they said, all right, here's the script. We need you to record the starting lineups in your Disney hotel room. Go. And so...
Not the same energy in there.
No, not at all.
Probably
Well,
not
you'd be
great
surprised. It's
acoustics
Disney.
either.
They've got a lot of stuff in there. No, so I packed my closet full of sweatshirts and pillows, and I had my mic with me and my computer. And they sent the music, the track they use, and the official track.
Yo, you see, I got freaked out. I was like, oh, snap.
And I did. I got goosebumps in my room when I first played it, and I went, all right, here we go. And so I just recorded it how I kind of remembered it from back in the day.
Right.
And it's funny because listening back now, Ray always did, and now.
Right.
Yeah.
But in my head, that wasn't what I remembered or how I felt most comfortable doing it. And so that's why I do, and now. I land on that now.
Right.
And that's what I did in that hotel room. And I'm sure my neighbor thought I was insane, because I did it a few times. I tried to pad the walls, but there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
It's amazing, man.
Do you have a favorite player to announce? Like, whose name do you enjoy?
Big Dave.
You're trying to get that out of me, aren't you?
Trying, baby. Putting in an effort. Can't
Almost. Very close.
Oh, thank you, Tim.
I would say Io and DeMar are probably my favorites. Io because, I've done it.
You guys
since I
must
was
have like a
freshman.
relationship at this point.
We
where-
know each other, and it's funny story. His mom messaged me after his senior day when we realized he wasn't coming back, and said, hey, I really want your 3-point call of his just recorded. Would you mind recording it for us so we can save it for later? And I said, of course. So I sent it to her, and that I thought was the end of the story. And then, of course, he gets drafted by the Bulls, and now we're texting like, well, guess we get to do it more.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's something special about that. And Malcolm Hill, too. You know, he played for Illinois.
Yeah,
I did all
right,
4 years
true.
with Malcolm, his senior night. And so part of it is the connection, but part of it is that, that's just a fun thing to do. And DeMar's been fun. One, you get to say a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Really good at that one.
Alliteration, I like.
Yeah,
I
sure.
like the DeMar, DeRozan.
Yeah.
So
It's just alliteration in the name, as opposed to some broadcasters try to like force alliteration
Right.
into what they're saying or what they're calling.
Yeah.
DeMar's name is just right there for you.
Yeah.
well, and as a PA guy, you know, if you're doing play-by-play, you can come up with nicknames or use just last names or just first names or whatever. There's a little more formality to what I do, so I'm kind of stuck with their name, whatever it is. And, you know, you can say, a lot of broadcasters got around Giannis by just calling him Giannis or the Greek Freak or whatever. I have to say Giannis Antetokounmpo every time. And
Right.
so you eventually
nailed
get
it.
pretty good. And now apparently Costas.
Yes.
Amen.
More practice.
The Giannis to the Bulls plan is slowly coming into reality.
Phase 1 is complete.
Phase 1, we got one of the brothers.
That's right.
Plenty more up ahead with our guy Tim Sinclair in studio, the PA announcer for Bulls, Bears, Fire, all the teams.
Missed an
This guy.
opportunity there, didn't he?
Quick break to tell you all today's episode brought to you by our wonderful friends at PointsBet. This football season, PointsBet's bringing you a better way to bet live on games.
Yeah.
You can place a live same-game parlay, bet on the next drive to be a touchdown, and cash out on your live second-half overbet. With PointsBet, you have access to more live football markets than ever before. You can build the perfect live same-game parlay by combining your favorite bets anytime during the game, including spreads, totals, player props, and more.
More?
Choose the outcome of the next drive and next points with PointsBet Lightning Bets. I love me those Lightning Bets, Dave. So whether you're on the move or on the couch like I was all Sunday watching football,
He really was.
do it live on PointsBet. Cody, I'm still mad at you. I followed your
Let that
advice for the
man
Monday
live.
night doubleheader.
Let him live.
All of it was wrong. I'm never listening to you again. Download the PointsBet app today and sign up with that promo code CHGO to get your first 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services. JK, Cody, I forgive you. Just make better picks next time.
Wow, gonna put that all on him, man. Well, I'll tell you where you can get your forgiveness at when he shows up to the tailgate.
Oh.
That is happening on Sunday.
Yes.
The Bears and the Texans, our first ever tailgate. This will be my first Bears tailgate ever. Never been to a tailgate, Tim, for the Bears. Never been.
I haven't either, but I'm always working the game. So
Right, it's always working, man.
I believe I may have a few other things going on, but if I can make it, I will.
We're starting at 8 a.m., folks, if you want.
8 a.m. Yes, you start real early at 8 a.m., y'all. Sunday, September 25th, when they play the Texans. The official CHGO tailgate is going to go for 4 hours, y'all, from 8 to 12 all the way up until kickoff. You can walk right on over to the stadium. It's just a quick little 15-minute walk to go hear this man call that Bears game.
And depending on where you're tailgating, you might hear over and over and over, "Welcome to Soldier Field.
Yeah.
Thank you for attending." On repeat.
We'll
So-
be in the empty lot behind Nima at Michigan and Roosevelt.
I
We'll
apologize
probably
in
hear from
advance.
there.
Yeah, probably.
We'll be listening out for that, man. Listen, we'll have a DJ there for you. We'll have some awesome food. There'll be a food truck, and not just brews and not just booze, but brews and booze.
Both of them?
Both of them things.
Wow.
Up in there.
Are we going to have coffee? Because it's starting early.
Well,
You want me to
wait,
bring you a coffee, Will?
Somebody's got to ask about that. I'm
Yeah,
going to need
he's
some
got to
coffee.
have it, man. He's got to have it. Don't you? I know you got some. of that
I'll bring
coffee.
you some Strava.
Strava all day long. It's
There
got
you
you
go,
covered, man. And you get all this plus a local DJ to play the tunes for you. Get all this for $34, y'all.
Amazing deal.
Less than a 15-minute walk to Soldier Field, and you get to walk through Grant Park and see all that beautifulness of the city. Now, limited parking upgrades are also available, but they're going fast, y'all. So you might want to get on that. So if you want to bear down and come hang out with us, all CHGO.com. Reserve your spot now and click that link below in the description for more of that info. Will be there. Matt will be there. I will be there. Joey, you going to be there? Joey will be there, y'all.
Tim
It's
Sinclair.
official. Tim Sinclair. You will hear him.
My voice will be there.
His voice will be there. He will be there in voice.
Yes.
Speaking of places people can hear your voice, Tim, you subtly dropped and super humbly dropped in a previous
Humble
conversation.
flex, yes.
Oh yeah, NBA 2K.
No, yeah.
Can we talk about that for a
Sure,
second?
no
What's
biggie.
it like to use your voice on a video game? Who approached you for that, or did you apply for that? How did that whole process go down?
Long story, semi-short. When I went with the Pacers to India a couple of years ago,
Okay.
I was having breakfast with the two mascots. Now, they were not in character, unfortunately. That would have been amazing. But they were out of their costumes, so to speak. They probably would not like them being called costumes. I don't know what they're called, but anyway. And one of them, the one from Sacramento, Slamson, said, I don't remember his real name. Slamson said to me, my girlfriend works for 2K and would like to talk to you. Are you interested? I said, yes, absolutely.
Didn't have to think about that one.
No. And fast forward like a year, because of COVID and a bunch of stuff happening, it just got pushed back. But finally, I got the phone call from them saying, we want to incorporate public address announcers into the game. Would you be interested in coming out to California and recording? And for me, being in the game is cool, but getting to see behind the scenes of how all that goes together was way cooler.
Yeah.
And so
And that was what I wanted to know is like, what do they do? Like, what do you do when you're there? Do you have to like read every single 450 players in the NBA?
oh, yes. And multiple ways. So they have very proprietary software that does it all. But essentially, they're trying to get every work part they could possibly need. And so last year was a lot more involved than this year because they already had a lot of the things they need. But we had to do, for example, the score could be anything when the player is playing, right? And if you're the home team, you would like the home team, if they're winning, to sound more excited than the other team. So we had to do from 0 all the way, from 1 all the way to 150, 1, 1, 2, 2. Oh my God. 3, 3. All the way. And then you have to do it the other way. You have to do it as if your team's losing. 3, 3, 4, 4. So they could then grab whichever number they wanted at the end of every quarter. So you'd say at the end of the first quarter, the score is Chicago 3,
So how far along in that process until you lost your mind and like punched a wall?
You lose your voice before you lose your mind. And it was, the first time was 6 or 7 days. This last time was about 4. But every name you have to do as if they're the home starter, they're the visiting starter, they're going to the free throw line, they just made a 3-pointer, they just dunked both home and away. So you've got to come up with different ways. Like, you don't just do Zach LaVine and you're done. You do Zach LaVine for the starting lineup, but then you have to do Zach LaVine as if he's playing for
checking
the
into
road.
the game,
or shooting a free throw or
Yeah.
whatever. So you do every name multiple ways, and there are a lot of players in the NBA, and there's all the potential draft picks, there's all the my players that they have created. They've added in 23 a lot of
So do you also have to do that with fictitious players
Yes.
that don't exist?
Correct.
Oh my
And
goodness.
this year they added ways to split. So instead of recording just Zach LaVine, you did Zach LaVine. So then you could create Tim LaVine. They could then start grabbing first names and last names and putting new ones together.
Wow.
And so it's amazing what they do and how they do it, and it was a blast to be a part of.
And as you're doing this, like what percent volume are you at? Are you able to like do it kind of how you're doing it now, or are you like really belting
You're
it?
supposed to be doing it like you're doing it in the game.
Yeah, so I could definitely see how your voice would
We
go
would
pretty
work
quick.
3 or 4 hours a day, and then I mean, but the great part is you're in Southern California, and you've got a hotel and a per diem, and so like my girlfriend was out there with me last year, and she slept in, and then when I was done, we would go tour Southern California. So it's kind of a vacation slash.
Doesn't sound like the worst, actually.
It's not all bad. I mean,
And then you get to be in 2K.
Right. I would do it again.
Pretty cool.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Is there a sporting event you haven't called that you just are dying to call?
A few. I would love to do an Olympics sometime.
Okay.
I would love to do a World Cup game at some point. I've done some really big
Not going
soccer.
to Qatar this fall?
I don't think I have my passport ready for that one, but it's in 4 years. It's going to be in North America, but Chicago is not one of the cities.
How did they skip Chicago on that?
I don't know all the ins and outs of
Makes me
that.
mad.
I'm hoping
Maybe
I get a
if
phone
the
call.
Arlington Heights thing works out.
Hey, you know what?
Yes.
Me, my brother, my
honestly.
dad went to Germany, Bulgaria? Germany and some other 94, Soldier Field, 94 World Cup.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things I've ever done.
And soccer events are
Oh
so
my
much
gosh.
fun. Are so much fun. The Super Bowl, I mean, Alan Roach has his grip firmly on that at the moment, but he's got to quit eventually. so who knows?
That's awesome, man. Is there anything outside of sports that you look forward to, like voiceover work for commercials or anything
Yeah.
like that? In
I
a
would-
world or something like that.
And I don't know if my voice is quite that awesome. I mean, that's a cool thing.
It's pretty damn cool, man.
I would really like to do, and I've done some of this on a smaller scale, but at the big award ceremonies where they have somebody live behind a curtain doing, now please welcome star of X, Y, and Z, you know,
Film
Brad
info.
Pitt.
Right,
And then he
right.
walks out. Like that, I think would be a really cool kind of,
Like the Academy Award.
yeah,
person.
any of those awards things would be
Wow.
a whole lot of fun. I've done a lot of pre-recorded stuff for, you know, some bigger organizations that have things like that,
Right,
but nothing
right.
on that level yet. So,
All right,
One
it's
day,
coming.
maybe.
It's coming, man.
Maybe.
It's on the way, so I can't wait. I can't wait to hear that, though.
Oh.
Like, I know him.
Yeah, now anytime I just hear that coming out of my TV, it's like, oh, yeah, this is Tim.
Yeah, it's
It's
Tim.
Tim from the set of CHGO.
well, it'd be similar to what we did for the 75th All-Star thing.
Yeah.
The halftime deal was really just introducing players
There's a lot
in
of
a
names.
non-sports
Yeah.
Yeah, it was me and Spike Lee on TNT for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
But man, that was a lot
pretty
of fun as
cool.
well. So.
Yeah.
So you knew ahead of most everybody else in the world that they were saving MJ for last and he would make an appearance?
I was told he was going to be there, but there's always but if he's not,
Right,
right,
because
yeah.
you just didn't know. You're flying from anybody flying from Florida to Ohio, you know, in Sunday afternoon. You just don't know. But I did hear in my headset about 20 minutes before that he was going to be there and that we were going to get to do it. And man, I feel like I was flawless for 74 and a half names. And you got to the a 6-time NBA champion, and they showed him on the screen, and Cleveland exploded. I mean,
A city that had been
hated him,
tortured
right?
by
Hated him.
Michael for years.
just, and even seeing like some of the players were surprised, I think, that he was there, and it took some composing
Yeah.
to get through the second half of that for me, just because it was, you knew it was a cool moment. Everybody was watching this thing, so pretty fun.
That's
so awesome, man.
Were there certain moments throughout the season of home Bulls games where you're clearly focusing on making sure you're doing a great job calling the action and focusing on that, but were there certain moments where you sort of caught yourself really enjoying the fandom part of I don't know if you've sort of embraced the Bulls at all in any part of your fandom brain, but getting caught up in the moment as opposed to just calling the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a huge Bulls fan and have been for a long time, and so it's hard not to, but you do watch games very differently. Well, like when you're covering a game, you have to watch it differently than if you're just a fan. And so
Supposed to.
You're supposed to watch a game, yes, great point. And so for
No
me,
cheering in the press box, Will.
right.
That's why Matt and I aren't allowed.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Zach's 360 breakaway,
man.
Lonzo's court length pass. You know,
Yes.
there are a few moments that stick out where it's just like, whoo.
Yeah.
You know, and I will occasionally make noises out loud, ideally with my mic off, that are very fan and not very public addressy.
Right.
And for the most part, the mic has been off when I've done it. So that's always the goal.
Oh, man. Do you have a favorite game that you called just for the Bulls? I mean, like a favorite game of yours where you were like, you know what? I can't believe I was here for this.
Man, there's been a lot that I would say were great. You mentioned the Clippers game.
Yes.
That is definitely a favorite from last season.
Yeah, you definitely stand
Mars
out to
50?
me. Yeah,
That was
Tim definitely stands
Amazing.
out to me when I think of that game because I just think of that and one when he fell on the ground, and I just think of your explosion in your voice because you could tell you were like, oh snap, you know, you could hear it in there, man.
Well, it's genuine, but also it's a reflecting the crowd, right? Like everybody was going crazy, so I'm just mirroring. It's like the moon, like I'm just mirroring the sun here.
Right.
That makes my job, in theory, pretty easy.
Right.
So I would probably put that near the top. I would also say Io's first start for me was a good one.
Because you get to say the from Chicago.
So
and Bulls fans were chanting his name. Like I went to a preseason game last season. People were chanting for him in a preseason game from the nosebleeds before he had played a single game in a Bulls jersey. I mean, like that guy is beloved in this city from day one when the Bulls drafted him.
The story behind how and why we did from Chicago, I don't think anybody knows, or very few people do. I saw like last minute he was starting because of an injury and I went, being the Illinois guy, I was excited to be able to say from the University of Illinois, but his whole career at Illinois, I said from Chicago. Obviously knew the Derrick Rose from Chicago.
Right.
And so finally I'm like, I am not paid nearly enough to make this decision. And so I asked up the chain, which one do I do?
Yeah.
And they're like, we'll ask Io. Fast forward now to the press conference afterward where Casey Johnson is saying, you recognize the significance. He's like, well, yeah, I'm from Chicago. So when he answered the question, he was answering, do you want the city you're from or the state you're from? And in his head, well, the city, it's more specific, it makes sense. He wasn't thinking the city you're from or the college you went to.
Right, yeah.
So he answered Chicago, not weighing University of Illinois with the city of Chicago. He was weighing the state of Illinois with the city of Chicago. I'm glad he chose Chicago because obviously Sun-Times back page is from Chicago. And I have that printed just because, I mean, I had very little to do with it, but I at least got to say it.
Yeah. It's super cool and probably also a good move on your part to ask up the chain of command if there was a preference either way, because as far as I recall, one of your predecessors, Ray Clay, had a difference of opinion on how he was supposed to versus how he wanted to announce MJ his last time at the UC in a Wizards jersey right before he retired.
Correct.
And that there was a difference of opinion there, and that's what ended up having, Ray Clay leaving the Bulls. So good calls to make sure let's all make sure we're all on the same page on how we handle this.
I'm generally a forgiveness rather than permission guy.
Right.
But in this case, I figured permission was a good plan.
Speaking of the starting lineups, this is like a very niche Billy Donovan thing. He does not share the starting lineup before the game. A lot of coaches, like when I was covering the Warriors, you could ask Steve Kerr and he'd just tell you. Billy does not like to do that. But you are, practicing the starting lineup an hour or 2 hours before the game. Do you know in advance who it's going to be, or are you just...
Will's trying to get a new source.
I'm trying to see if I can get a new source. I want to be the first to tweet it.
I believe we have it 30 minutes ahead, I want to say, is the time that we are required to have it at the scorer's table. I could be off on that by a few minutes. So typically I don't know, and it is changeable. It has happened on a couple of occasions. The worst is when they don't tell you they've changed it, which has also happened. But I generally find out about 30 minutes ahead, so shoot me a text. I'll see if I can help you.
Are there any players because I know Dalen Terry's in, you know what I'm saying? Like, when you go into a new name that you haven't said yet, is it something you're preparing, or is it more, I'm just going to do it in the moment and see how it feels?
Almost always I will just do it in the moment.
Okay.
Again, I don't want anything to feel forced. I don't want it to feel practiced, or I don't want to get in my own head where I'm like using the acoustics of the bathroom to go, does that sound right? Like it's just, so I typically, and it's going to change too. If they're a starter versus if they just hit a shot, I'm going to probably change it a little bit. So I generally wait. I haven't said Dalen Terry's name in an announcery way yet at all.
Would you like to now?
No. Everybody show up at game one.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. It's a professional, ladies and gentlemen. I love it, man.
We've got a little bit more time left up ahead with Tim Sinclair, including continuing this little thing Dave came up with called the guest question relay, where our previous guest leaves a question for our current guest, and then you get to leave one for our next guest. We'll get to that and a few more fun questions coming up next. But first, Big Dave, I believe we have a word from our sponsor at Game Time.
Hey, Matt, I have a
Speaking
question.
of going to Bulls games,
I have a question for you, Matt.
what's that?
What time is it?
Game Time! Who?
Game Time. It's the hottest new ticketing site that makes it easier than ever to score the best deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows. Have you ever dreamed of sitting in the seat that you thought you could? All right, that 50-yard line, that courtside, sitting so close that you can see this man Tim Sinclair calling out those names of the Bulls games? Well, guess what? You can get all that stuff right here on the Game Time app. The biggest last-minute price drops can be found on the seats you thought that you could never buy or never afford. You can get it here. You won't find a better deal this season on Bulls tickets, y'all. You won't find it. You'll find it here on the Game Time app. And just like CHGO, it's created by the fans and for the fans, and you get that guaranteed lowest price. So if you love what you see and what we do here at CHGO, then you'll love Game Time. The best way to support us is by buying your tickets through that link in the description. Join that 15 million people who have downloaded the Game Time app and score the best seats to all your favorite events, not just sports. Get that music too. All that you can get at Game Time, because I asked that question one more time to you. Matt, what time is it?
Game Time! Who? Shout out Randy Brown.
Yes, shout out. Shout out, baby.
So, Tim, you know, you're there for pregame shoot-arounds and stuff. Everybody's getting their ducks in a row for the big, you know, entertainment extravaganza that is every single Bulls home game. Do you ever get little brief moments to sort of, you know, a player will come up, dribbling a basketball, stretching around, whatever, and you can chat with them, and then you can kind of get a sense of like, oh, that guy's going to go off and have a big game tonight. Did you ever have any of those moments where you're doing your game prep, the player's doing their game prep, and then you each kind of just take a pause, just have a little chat?
Yeah, we'll talk. I don't know that I've ever gotten performance ideas out of that. I've seen some shoot-arounds where I went, DeMar is on one tonight. Like, look out. But the fun times are, like, DeMar's very routine, and he comes out and he sits, like, literally a foot and a half from me to put on his shoes before he shoots around every single game. And so usually we'll 2 sentences, 3 sentences at most. You know, it's not like, you know, if I saw him at a grocery store, would he recognize me? Maybe, probably, but it's not like we're great friends. But we do get a chance
But you say his name with such gusto every night.
If I said, DeMar, then he would recognize that.
If you shot a trash ball at a movie theater.
Well, Malcolm Hill, for example, one of his first games with the Bulls, he was standing there and just talking, chatting, and hadn't put it together yet that I was the same guy from Illinois. And I was like, hey, good to have you here. I'm like, I don't know if you've made this connection. And he's like, seriously? I'm like, Malcolm Hill. That's just what I did. It's the only way.
You said his name to his face.
Right. And he goes,
Right.
Oh, and we've been great friends ever since. We talk every single game that he's around. So sometimes your voice is your password to like, oh, that's what you do.
Dude, I wish I could do that, just get into a club that way. That would be the coolest thing ever.
I got back into the 2020 All-Star Game halftime show that way.
What?
Because they had so I like All-Star Game is just such a long day, and at halftime I had to pee.
Yeah.
And so Chance the Rapper and DJ Khaled, they're doing their thing, and I'm like, I've seen this 3 times at rehearsal. I've got to go now.
Yeah.
And so I left, but they had a closed bowl performance, meaning they weren't going to open the doors for anybody to come back until it was over.
Right.
Okay.
I did not know this. They let me leave, and so I was going to come back, and the security guy, like I wasn't working in Chicago at the time, he would have known who I was otherwise. Yeah. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't let you in. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, here's my pass. He's like, no, it's closed bowl. We can't let you in. I'm like, I need to get in there. And he goes, why? And I go, ladies and gentlemen, Chance the Rapper. And he's like, oh, God, get in there. And I sat down just in time to say, ladies and gentlemen, Chance the Rapper. So every once in a while, it comes in handy.
Yo, that's one of the best things artists is doing this. That's amazing, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like having vocal cords that are the same thing as like a wristband
Yeah,
to get into somewhere.
Right.
Or, you know, a badge around your neck.
Right.
Comes in handy every once in a while.
Tell me something only Tim would know.
Right.
Except for you get to just say it.
Right.
Oh
Yep.
man. So I want to do this segment with you. We do with all our guests.
Okay.
It's called Pass It On. It's when our previous guest leaves a question for our next guest. They don't know who the next guest is going to be. They have no idea, but they just leave a question. It could be about sports, anything, whatever. This time, it was Chuck Swirsky.
Oh, Chuck, I love Chuck.
Chuck Swirsky was our last guest, and he left a question. Joe, you can put that up for me. He left a question just for you, Tim, to answer, and so we're going to play that right here.
You can sit down and have dinner with one person, currently living, one person with a sit down, and they are picking up the bill. Not you, but they are picking up the bill. And who is that person you're having dinner with? So you can look at the menu and you don't have to say, oh my gosh, you mean I gotta, no. You're not paying, they're paying for it. But I want to know who is that person that you're having a meal with for whatever reason.
All right.
Great
I knew it was going to
question.
be something fairly deep if it was
Before
Chuck.
you answer, real life, have you and Chuck ever sat down and had dinner together, and who picked up the tab?
We have talked about it many times, but we have not yet.
Okay.
I knew Chuck. I worked in Chicago like 20-some years ago, and he was on a radio station that I worked for when he was doing stuff for the Raptors. So we go way back, and it's been really fun to reconnect. But no, not yet. But I'm hoping yes soon, and also him.
Yeah. That would be my answer for sure. All right, so what's your answer to his question? Any person in the world, you can sit down, have dinner, and it's their treat.
There are a lot on my list, but if I have to pick one,
It's exciting.
I'll say Obama.
Oh, okay.
Can't go wrong with that answer.
Well, he's definitely picking up the check.
Yeah, right. For a lot of reasons. One, I was weighing several presidents actually, partly because of what they know. I was considering Bush because of the 9/11 thing and kind of just how did that all go down from an interior perspective. But I think because of Obama's connections to Chicago and to his what he means to the city and his time as president, and he was there a long time. There'd be so much fascinating information. I'd just pepper him with questions till he said, all right, it's time for you to stop talking now.
He was at a Bulls game. Maybe it was the Clippers game?
I don't remember which
Around
game it
that
was.
last couple games.
I did introduce
Did you do him?
Yeah, I did.
So I'm sure
that's
you could
awesome,
use
dude.
your vocal password on him.
Yeah, right? I will say I am keeping at least a mental list of some of the people I have gotten to introduce, and he's up there near the top.
That's a pretty cool one.
No,
Probably
that's a real
the
cool
most globally famous and recognizable Bulls fan.
Yeah, has to
Right. I would say that's true. I mean, he and obviously got Jordan in this year, and I've gotten Messi and Brady, and there's a number of them, but he's top five.
Top five. I feel it.
Brady.
So now you have to leave a question for the next guest. So
Man, I
what
have
question
two.
do
I
you
don't
have?
know if I
Well, you
want
can
to
ask
do
them both.
I can do both.
Yeah, ask two
I've got a
questions.
serious one and a not so serious one. Do I have to look at the camera?
No, the mic is yours.
Chuck
You
did?
can look right at the
We
camera.
have a full segment to fill, so go.
All right. Okay. Two questions. The first is, what moment has changed your life forever? You could pick one moment that you went, without this, I would be a very different human. What would that be? The second is, what is in your trunk right now?
Oh, God. Wait, which one of those is the serious question?
Depends on what's in your trunk.
Somebody's got a
Depends
body
on the
in
next
there,
guest,
Tim.
man. I'm curious about the
Depends
next
on
guest.
who's here.
Yeah, for real, man. Oh my goodness.
I think you
man.
can learn a lot about a person if you know what's in their trunk.
Right. You're
Are
absolutely
you
right.
prepared to answer the trunk question?
I'm prepared.
What's in your trunk right now?
None of your business.
Yeah, see, there you go.
No, what is in my trunk? I keep stuff in my trunk that I'm just trying to be prepared for stuff. So I got shoes in there. I have a shirt in there. I have some underwear in there. I have an umbrella in there. A pillow I got in there.
You never know.
You never know, man. Like I'm just always trying to be prepared for anything.
You never know when a man's going to need underwear and a pillow.
You never know. Hey, bro, I've been in situations, Tim. I've been in situations, brother. I'm just telling you. But yeah, I think those are the things that I know for sure that I have in my trunk. What about you? You got a new car. What do you got?
Roll of paper towels.
Okay.
A hoodie. A few tools.
Okay.
That you need in your car. I think the one random object in there right now is a like zippable, collapsible, on-the-go camping set of bags. So it's like a mini set of bags that you can it's like a little satchel that's like this big. It's like a to-go set of bags, so you don't have to like lug bags board somewhere if you want to play bags on the go.
Oh, those kind of bags. Okay, all right. I'm thinking bags.
I was there at first too, but I caught on eventually.
Okay, all right.
Cornhole to the people who say it incorrectly. Those are the kinds of bags I'm talking about.
Okay.
Like throw the bags.
Will, what you got? What you got in your trunk, Will?
I have like a gym bag with like a basketball and my basketball shoes.
Of course.
And I have, what is the word? Isn't an atlas like a book of maps?
Yeah. Atlas.
Of like California.
You get that at an antique
roads.
store?
Right.
My girlfriend's dad gave it to me, so I just left it.
You
in
go
there.
to mount that on your windshield when you're driving from point A to point B.
Well, I'm in Illinois now. I don't really need that one, so I
It's
just leave it in the
paperback
trunk.
GPS.
That's right.
Exactly. That's all I got.
Have you ever used your voice for that gig? Being like the G-Maps navigation
No,
guy?
I would love to do it. It would be
Turn left.
eternal. The recording process would be eternal. It always sounds fun until you start and you're like, oh my goodness, this is going to take forever. But yeah, I'd totally do it.
Oh man.
So, turn left.
Who's the coolest person that you just freaked out about meeting that you've met doing what you do over the years?
I mean, I would say the All-Star game. It isn't the person, but it was the most recent one in Cleveland because you had the top 75 there, or at least the ones who were alive.
Yeah.
And I was washing my hands, getting ready to leave the bathroom, talking simultaneously with John Stockton, Clyde Drexler, Bill Walton, and Hakeem Olajuwon.
What?
It was
Too much greatness.
It was the
Could not
weirdest
compute.
thing ever. And no one of those guys would be on my list of greatest people to meet.
Right.
But just I had just fist bumped Shaq and walked by Usher, and I mean his entourage was too big to get too close.
Right. Yeah.
And just that much greatness under one roof was mind-boggling, and the fact that I had then the pass to actually be kind of close to him was crazy.
So did you get a sense, if you're there with Stockton, Walton, Hakeem, what it was like for poor Stockton to try to play NBA basketball with those just gigantor human beings?
He does not look like he belongs. Well, just especially now,
right?
Like he's an insurance guy, probably. I mean, if you see him on the street and don't know who he is,
like the Dream Team Doc when he's walking the streets of Barcelona, and everyone is like Charles Barkley, David Robinson, and he and his family just strolled along,
Team Doctor,
not getting recognized.
Yeah. Well, that happened with the fire when Schweinsteiger was playing here, one of the best soccer players in the world.
Shout out,
they were at
Bastion.
the airport. And somebody saw the team walking through, recognized Stockton, like, hey, would love to take a picture with you guys. And they handed their phone to Schweinsteiger to take the picture.
Shut up.
And I'm sure he just did it. He just didn't look like a soccer player per se, but he was one of the best to ever do it.
I mean, you know who else wouldn't recognize Bastian Schweinsteiger is this guy right here.
I mean, it is what it is.
But I would know if I saw him walk in, I'd be like, that's an athlete.
Yeah.
He played something. He played something. I'm not going to ask him to take a picture. I'm like, he played something. But I'd say that about Will, too. Will looks like he played something.
He does.
Nope.
Kyle Korver's twin brother.
Yeah.
The other one, Matt, and I know this won't make you happy, I will say having brief conversations with LeBron is still
I was
going
to say that. Yeah, man.
I mean, in fact, when there was nobody in the stadium, so 2020, we were playing the Lakers, and the athletes are much more free to turn around and talk because there aren't fans right behind me, so they'll chat and whatever. So he was sitting literally right in front of me, getting ready to check in at some point in the game, and they called a foul, and the officials, they put up the hand signal, but there's a giant human sitting in front of me, and I couldn't see what it was. And so I said to Rosie, our official scorer, I said, who was that foul on? And LeBron turned around and said, 35. And I'm like, foul on number 35. And he was right. But then I said thank you to LeBron but my mic was still on. So
Thank
you hear
you.
this, thank you, thank you. And there was nobody in the building, so nobody heard it.
35, thank you.
But my boss in my headset was like, "Who were you thanking?" I'm like, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." So it was just one of those deals. But it's having those kind of conversations.
Let me ask you about the Bulls this season. Yeah. What are you looking forward to from this team? They had a fun run last season, finishing 6th, getting to the playoffs. What are you looking forward to this season from the team?
Am I allowed to say continuity? Can I say
Say it loud.
It's kind of a trigger word around here.
I figured.
It is not. Say it loud.
No, but I really do want to see this group all play together for an extended period of time to see what they can do. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Drummond and Dragic and some others. We have a whole lot of people's names who start with the letter D, by the way. It's like nearly the whole team.
Yeah.
Rosen. Desumu. And So, Dalen.
Derek Jones Jr.
Right.
Wow.
Donovan, Billy Donovan.
Dang.
But I just want to see what that looks like, because I remember the first month and a half of the season, even without Patrick Williams, going
pretty awesome.
Showtime.
Yeah.
With Lonzo leading the charge on all that, it seemed like I want to see that. So hopefully at some point that will all happen.
Yeah.
And they can put that together for a run to end the season rather than start the season. And we'll see what happens from there. But
I like that. That's true, man.
So Bulls are making the playoffs again.
that's my plan.
Come on.
I want to do more playoff games.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
More of that, man.
Playoff games at the Madhouse.
Oh,
There is
man.
nothing better, in my opinion, as a Chicago sports fan. Being in that building for a Bulls playoff game, top of the top.
Yeah. And winning a series would in
Explosion.
that building especially would be
Yeah.
crazy. So
No, it will be
I'm ready.
explosion. Yeah, I'm ready too. I can't wait.
Sadly, we are just about out of time. Tim, thank you so much for coming to the studio to hang out with us today and answer all of our nagging
been awesome.
questions about your awesome job.
Yes.
My pleasure.
That everyone
Anytime.
who works here is jealous of.
Oh, and your guys from C-Red UK.
Oh
Shout
yeah.
out to Neil and Matt. I was on their show this weekend.
I know. I
man.
listened to it, and you, Matt, you were. on too?
I'm going to be on with them next week.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Same.
Tim Sinclair, listen
There
to
you
me.
go.
They're getting through all of us.
Follow Tim on Twitter at Tim J. Sinclair if you aren't already. He's the voice of the Bulls, the Bears, the Fire, the Illini, and soon, maybe someday, the Super Bowl and the Academy Awards.
I thought you were going to say
Sure, hey.
CHGO Bulls.
Speak it into existence.
Yes.
I like it all.
yes.
And before he leaves, we'll bug him about his starting lineup for us.
That's all right. We'll get it.
Appreciate him for coming by. Give this video a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed today's show. It helps us out a lot. If you aren't subscribed to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button.
Yes.
We are just a few away from 20K subscribers on our CHGO Sports YouTube channel, and appreciate those of you who have subscribed. Thanks and shout outs as always to our producer and our pal Joey. You can follow Will on Twitter. Make sure you're following Will because training camp's about to start.
Oh, yeah.
He's got the inside scoop for you at Won't Gottlieb. Big Dave is at BowBAWL Sports on Bulls_Peck. We collectively are CHGO_Bulls.
Yeah.
Until tomorrow, when we will be right back here in these seats for Joey, for Will, for Tim Sinclair, everybody, Big Dave and myself. Appreciate you. Love you, Bulls Nation. See you, Red. Be good.